Well, hello everyone. It's 5 o'clock in Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us at the International Mountmakers Forum 2020. I'm Emily Kaplan. I'm an objects conservator at Smithsonian NMAI, and I believe I'm the #1 fan of Mountmakers and always have been, but there's a lot of competition for that. So I think conservators learn more from Mountmakers than from anybody else. So just a little housekeeping here. Your Please note that your microphones will be muted and your cameras turned off during the presentations. And this is so that because we're recording all the presentations to eventually post to the fabulous IMF YouTube channel. So we want the audio quality to be as good as possible. And we're also live streaming on YouTube at the IMF's channel. Check the chat, but this information I'm going to run by you right now is also in the chat. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function on Zoom. And if you have a question for a specific person, please use their name so that we know it's directed to them. We'll try to address as many questions as possible as we can at the end of each presentation, but any questions we don't get to, and there are so many, can be brought up during the after parties or through the Slack app, and the links for those are in the chat. And also feel free to contact the presenters directly. All of their abstracts and bios are on the IMF's website. Again, the link is in the chat. So it's now time for our next speaker, Ian Hart, Natural History Exhibit Preparator, San Francisco, California, US of A, who is presenting A Clear View from Above, View Top Jar Lids for the exhibition of fluid preserved specimens.
I'm here to talk about a device for getting a better look at what lies underneath the surface. Maybe it's a good metaphor or an emblem for conferences like this. Or maybe it just is what it is. Fluid preserved specimens are an important part of natural history collections and exhibitions. Glass containers are preferred for both collection storage and display because of their clarity, and because glass containers, unlike clear plastic ones, are not dissolved by common preservative fluids like alcohol. It's a good thing this jar is made of glass. The acrylic block propping up the fish inside of it dissolved, but that's another story. Most common types of jar found in museum collections, those with opaque screw-top lids or with ground glass stoppers, don't afford good views through their tops, limiting viewing angles for exhibition. Table cases, in which most objects are seen from above, are a particularly challenging exhibition situation for fluid-preserved specimens. Flat plate glass can be used to make a translucent lid that affords the possibility of a top view into the container. However, condensation, drips, and ripples in the fluid surface will often spoil the view from above. From the side, those same drips and ripples can create confusing shadows and bright spots on a specimen that is otherwise clearly visible. The speckles on this shark are created by light shining through the drips on the underside of the lid. Here is the same specimen under even illumination. Immersion of the interior surface of the container solves the problems of condensation and ripples interfering with light transmission, just like a snow globe. But lid immersion interferes with jar sealing, and it eliminates important headspace for thermal expansion or contraction. The view top lid, developed at the California Academy of Sciences for the presentation of fluid-preserved specimens in the 2019 exhibition, Skin, Living Armor, Evolving Identity, solves these problems by incorporating glass construction, an air gap, and lid immersion. Custom fabrication by a glass artisan is necessary, but for the modestly sized containers depicted here, the work is relatively inexpensive and within the basic capability of a scientific glass shop. The bottom of the view top lid, shown facing up here, has a shoulder or rabbet. The top of the lid is flat. The system consists of a base jar and the lid. This particular lid was made to fit a base jar that we already had on hand. Here, the lid and base are assembled. This cross-section diagram shows the basic construction details of the view top lid system. The rabbet or shoulder in the lid creates head space large enough to allow the bottom face of the lid to contact the liquid preservative while preventing seal fluid contact. Fluid contact with the bottom of the lid prevents drips and ripples from interfering with the view. A fill hole allows fluid to be added after the lid is sealed. The void space in the lid allows it to be welded from commercially available borosilicate tube and plate. A vacuum relief hole is a fabrication artifact. It prevents dangerous negative pressure from developing in the void space after it's welded. It can be filled with silicone as soon as you get your work home from the shop, before any dust can get in and spoil the view. My communications with the glass shop are shown here. The shop was happy to work from hand-drawn sketches, email descriptions, and conversations on the phone, which were important. I originally proposed a solid glass lid, its shoulder or rabbet to be machined from a thick plate of glass. We talked about it on the phone, and the fabricator countered with the hollow design presented in the previous slides, which was far less costly to make. Borosilicate vessels are typically worked on lathes, so the capacity of the lathe in your fabricator's shop will also be an important factor in what size containers you can commission. This video shows a disc being fused to a tube to make a jar bottom. Here is a diagram of the components of the view-top container system. These parts will be welded together to make a base jar and the lid. When developing dimensions for a container, it's a good idea to take a look at the tubing sizes offered by borosilicate glass manufacturers and talk to your fabricator about what sizes of tubes and discs they stock. The filling procedure begins when the specimen is mounted and placed in the container. Enough preservative fluid is added to the container to keep the specimen covered. Silicone is then applied to the clean rim of the jar, but the filling hole is left open. When the rim seal cures, the fluid level is topped off through the filling hole to bring it up past the bottom of the lid, but not far enough to choke the headspace or contact the seal. I'm using a large syringe and a needle with a blunt tip. These images show a meniscus forming where the fluid has started to contact the bottom of the lid. Once that disappears, filling is finished. The fill hole is then sealed and allowed to cure. Now the container can be installed. Unfortunately, silicone is vapor permeable. Some alcohol and water will pass through it. The preservative fluid has lost contact with the bottom of the lid in this picture. It needs topping up in order to prevent the meniscus from wandering and interrupting the view of the fish below. The jar can be topped off by adding preservative with a syringe and a sharp needle pushed through the silicone-sealed filling hole. Here is a close-up. You may have already noticed that this particular lid doesn't look like the glass example I showed earlier. I made it from acrylic in our wood shop. The glass shop we worked with declined to fabricate a rectangular version of the design I presented here. Most glass shops will only weld containers that can be put on a lathe. It is very hard to find a glass shop that will weld rectangular containers, like the jar base in this picture. And if you can find one, the work will be very expensive. In case you are concerned about this lid dissolving, I'm glad to let you know that the boxfish was transferred back to its all-glass storage container after the 6-month run of this show. I'd like to end this talk with some suggestions for further experimentation should any of you decide to try this at home. Since preservative was lost through the seals of these jars, I'd like to suggest some possible strategies for lessening that leakage. The first is to improve jar-to-lid contact by grinding the mating surfaces flat. This could facilitate a much thinner seal, which would lessen the vapor transmissible area of it. The second strategy would be to investigate alternate sealing compounds that may have a lower vapor transmission rate. Different silicone resin chemistries and additives can be explored. Non-silicone compounds could also be tried out. This figure from NewSil, a maker of silicone resins, compares water vapor transmission rates of 9 different silicone chemistries. Thanks for your attention. If you have questions and comments, I would love to hear from you in the Q&A or via email. I'd like to acknowledge everyone who helped prepare this presentation and to thank the organizers of the Mountmakers Forum again for the opportunity to discuss this topic with you all. I'm wishing you clearer views from above in the future.
Well, that was a fantastic talk. Thank you, Ian. I've always been terrified of those jars, and that was really, really helpful. Our Q&A facilitator is Lisa Imamura. So Lisa, do you have some questions?
Yes, all right. Ian, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thanks.
All right, great. So we do have a question in the Q&A. Keep them coming, folks. The question is, how often do you find yourself having to top off the fluid on exhibition? And do you have to reseal the fill hole each time?
Yeah, for this exhibition, we just did one top off, and I think it was about after maybe it was a roughly 6-month exhibition, and I can't recall exactly how long through it was, but I think it was at least 3 months. And actually that particular jar may have had some other sealing problems that contributed to the loss of fluid. So, and it also, because that was a plastic lid, it may have even absorbed some of the fluid preservative into the plastic. Not sure about that. I didn't weigh the lid before putting it on, so I couldn't tell. But the fill hole doesn't have to be resealed because it's just being pierced by this very thin needle. And so it just, we assume it, it's good enough, even though there's, I guess, some kind of passageway through there, it's tight enough that it doesn't need to be resealed. But with a thin needle, it does take a while to get, even a few cubic centimeters of fluid in there.
All right. Actually, as kind of a follow-up question, if you were worried about it absorbing some of the fluids, does that mean it's not a reusable lid? Is that correct?
Well, yeah, the plastics are they can be problematic because most preservative fluids, especially the alcohols, will dissolve the plastic, and it's just not as stable as the glass. So that's why we were trying to make these glass versions. In the case of the square lid, we just couldn't do that economically, so we went with the plastic. I think one of the themes from this show, or from this conference, that I've noticed is how, sometimes mounts that you make for an exhibition have a life that goes beyond the run of the show. And in natural history museums, I think that's often the case. And so I think it's, I always try to make things that will last longer than just the run of the show, because often the show stays up longer than anticipated, or it gets used for storage. So there's a danger in kind of just making things that are temporary.
Absolutely. So we have another question here. I wonder if casting a glass lid in a mold instead of welding would be an option for the rectangular forms.
Yeah, I'm not a glass worker myself, so yeah, I guess there's probably many different ways of fabricating things out of glass, and yeah, that could work. I know, the thicker the glass is, I believe the more you'll get kind of a distortion of, when the light, when it goes into a denser surface, it'll bend and then come back out, and you get this displaced image, which can sometimes be disorienting. So that could be an advantage of having these kind of thin, hollow layers in that top lid, but that would be definitely something to try. If you could make those surfaces very smooth and flat, I think the plate glass that a glass fabricator uses is very, very flat. It's float glass, so it has nice optical qualities.
Sounds great. We did have a question come in about the specifics of the silicone used. Do you happen to have that on hand?
No, I don't. I think in this case, it was just a General Electric type. It was either type 1 or 2. I think, yeah, I always get mixed up in that and have to refer to it. I've used other kinds of silicone, and certainly you could mix up your own and stuff that in a tube and use it too. Yeah, one of the types gives off acetic acid as it cures, I believe, and the other, I don't know what it does. So that's something to think about. Anyway.
For sure. So there is a question here. Did you talk to any aquarium makers when seeking the rectangular jar?
Yeah, most aquaria are glued together, and that's problematic with alcohol. Alcohol will dissolve. It'll dissolve things. I actually had a project where he made some square glass containers with an adhesive that the fabricator said, "Oh yeah, this is alcohol safe," and they gave me some data that said there was no decrease in bond strength. I think it was a cyanoacrylate, like a UV cure cyanoacrylate adhesive, and about a week after I'd put the specimens in the jars, the adhesive softened and came in the next morning, and the jars were half full of alcohol, and the rest had run out. They hadn't been installed yet, so they'd run out into a secondary containment. But it was that's when we went with the welded glass.
Fair enough. I'm glad that you found that out before it was installed, because that could have been a mess, right?
Yeah, it was bad enough as it was.
Oh my gosh, so this is Emily again. That was fantastic, Ian. Thank you so much. Great questions. Yeah, cyanoacrylate, I don't know. So we need to move on to our next presenters, Sebastian Denise, Neha Velagapudi and Emily Fryer of the Canterbury Museum in Christchurch, New Zealand. And all of these talks have such awesome titles, I just have to say. They're presenting You Can Stick It, tips on the use of LASCO 303 for temporarily securing museum objects on display. You're on.
Hi, welcome to the Canterbury Museum, Christchurch, New Zealand. My name's Sebastian, I'm part of the exhibitions team here, and
I'm Neha, and I'm a conservation and collections technician.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm a conservator. Today we're going to present our paper, which is on You Can Stick It, and we're going to talk about tips and tricks for using LASCO 303 to temporarily adhere objects while on display. Have you ever needed to just stick an object in place, but be able to remove the adhesive later on? Our talk today will demonstrate creating and applying the dots used to form a temporary adhesive in direct contact with an object. Previously, Canterbury Museum used Roplex. However, since its discontinuation, we've been testing LASCO 303 as a replacement. Its properties prior to drying are slightly different, so hopefully this talk will give you the options to make a perfect dot.
here in our gallery of European decorative arts, removable adhesives are used extensively to protect our treasures from damage. As they retain a slight jelly consistency, they are also very good at reducing vibration experienced by objects. When top-heavy objects are to be displayed on fabric bases and pinning is not possible, we use small acrylic bases to increase the footprint of the object. We use them extensively to hold glass, metal, including silver, and glazed ceramic objects. It adheres well to glass, acrylic, metal, or painted shelves or surfaces. We also use it to secure mounts to shelves like acrylic plate stands or object lifts. One of the things our researchers have found it very useful for is temporarily fixing bones or other objects down to scanning plates for our 3D scanner.
This is LASCO 303 HV. It's used in conservation when an adhesive with permanent tackiness is required. When you start making your dots, you would either want to use a syringe without a needle attached or a bamboo skewer. It's also quite useful to create some dot templates to get a consistent size. We use non-stick baking. It dries a lot quicker. So LASCO is quite viscous, so it does tend to take a little bit of pressure to get it out of the syringe. But I'm just making the dots according to the templates underneath. I'm trying to keep it within that dot. So another way of applying is with a bamboo skewer. You can use the pointy end or the blunt end. So to remove the peaks and to slightly flatten the dots, we apply a baking paper sheet over the top for them to dry with. So after 24 hours of curing, the dots should be ready for use. You can peel the baking paper away to get access. The least contaminating method of application is to use the baking sheet itself to apply the dot to your object. To make this easier, you can cut up your sheets into more manageable sections. To apply the dot, just apply a little bit of pressure. Another method is to use the bamboo skewer to apply to the surface.
So how do we know that LASCO will be suitable for object restraint in an earthquake environment? One of the tests we do, which is very simple, is a tilt table test. So we take our object, we attach it to a table, and we lift it up until the object falls off. Preferably use a stunt object. So in placing your object onto display, locate it where you want it, press it down, and give it a gentle twist to lock the adhesive down. If you have to pick it up, you will have to replace the adhesive, so try and get it right first time. As a simple test for its earthquake effectiveness, we find that if it can support its own weight to 90 degrees, generally would support itself in an earthquake. So when it comes to removing the object, either you can gently twist to release the adhesive, or if you feel like that's not going to work, get some fine thread or nylon, and you can use it to slowly break the seal and release the object. So to remove it off any glass, metal, or glazed ceramic surface, it should just roll off and not leave any residue behind. Thus far, we've tested removability up to 6 months, so it's definitely suitable for temporary exhibition display. Other testing is ongoing.
Although tilt tables are an easily accessible test method, our results with creating a more real-life earthquake has given us greater insight into how the adhesive dots respond against other methods and materials, shown here shaken to 110% of New Zealand's building code. We are looking forward to extending this research with the University of Canterbury to provide more detailed recommendations of what is required for different sizes and weights. We are also exploring how the dots respond with age, as our results so far show that they are harder to remove after 6 months on display.
We hope that has been helpful and informative for you. Thanks for watching.
Boy, thanks, guys. That was fantastic. I bet we're going to have a lot of really good questions. So I'm going to hand it over to Lisa Imamura, who is our Q&A master at this moment.
All right, can you hear me? All right, Laura, thank you. Just wanted to thank you for sharing this project. I think we all know how frustrating it is when things get discontinued. So I'm glad that you're able to explore alternatives and having success at it. So go ahead and launch into the Q&A here. Well, someone says, did you say they discontinued Roplex? Glad I bought 2 gallons. And, when did that happen? Do you know?
It was 2012, actually. Yeah.
Oh, so right after the earthquake, basically.
Yeah.
2012. So I guess folks who have stocked up have a little bit of a reprieve. Okay, so next question. What is the longest you have left it on an object in your test?
At the moment, about 6 months.
Yes, 6 months. We've got some that we've done to a year, but those aren't across the board. So we tested on a number of different substrates. So we don't have a year's testing across the board, but for some items we have a year. And depending on the different substrates, it does slightly change how it reacts.
Got it. Next question. What is the, oops, sorry, I already got that one. How well does it adhere to frosted type glass surfaces?
Very well. It seems to. The gel consistency of it really likes to key into both semi-porous, which is like frosted glass, and non-porous surfaces. So thus far, it seems to have a bit more of a problem than Roplex with very dusty surfaces. So some slightly friable earthenware or terracotta, if it's got that slightly dusty feeling, particularly on the base of a room, but otherwise it seems to be doing quite well.
Yeah, because it doesn't penetrate into the object. The surface that it adheres to needs to not be friable or have any kind of loose material on it. Otherwise, it would need to be pre-consolidated with something like paraloid first. So you could use that if that was acceptable to the object in order to create that surface. But obviously, because it's not penetrating into the object, it's just sitting on it. It'll just detach. If there's anything friable, that'll come off first.
Great, so kind of related, we have a question about how Lascaux compares to like sticky wax or, to earthquake wax, if you've tried that, particularly for porous materials.
Yeah, so our test results, you saw some of the shape table testing. So our main bulk of the testing was related to comparing the wax, which is sort of quake wax or museum wax. There's a number of different titles for it, which is basically a microcrystalline based wax. There are different types of waxes, so it's you've got to be a bit careful about which type of wax it actually is. But what our actual thing was to look about that and to look at how Roplex and Lascaux related to the waxes and whether they were comparable across the board. Lascaux actually compares really well to those microcrystalline waxes. We found, as I'm sure anyone who's used museum wax, that it's really horrible to use because it basically gets on everything, and it's really hard to find. You make the balls and then you basically end up with a really sticky residue on absolutely everything that it touches. So one of our ways was to try and mitigate and to look at that and to look at how they compare. One thing to really note is that the waxes don't change that much over time, whereas the adhesives probably will. So that's part of our longitudinal testing, which is the future.
Oh yeah, that's an important note there, yeah. There is a question specifically about dental wax, and if you have results with that or experience with that as compared to something that's marketed as a quake wax or a museum wax.
Yeah, the dental wax is actually a different composition, and you need to heat that in order to get it to adhere to your object. So it's something that you're only going to try on something. Papa did some great studies on using it on some large Anne Robertson glass pieces, which are really stable, really, good substrate to deal with, no breaks, no things like that. So where you can heat your object, not very common, but where you can do that, then it's certainly an option, and the results are quite good. But it's not something that we tested because for the majority of the pieces that we're dealing with, they're very delicate and they're also not going to be able to be heated.
All right, thank you. We have a question here. Do you have a chart of what other materials you've tested? And I guess, well, returning to the museum wax, I think we've kind of addressed that, but in terms of how you kept track of your results and where we might find them.
We're publishing, yeah, so
we are hoping to publish this year, well, hopefully in AIC journal. So once we have submitted our paper, it should be available for everyone. But yes, we do have charts of all the materials that we've tested on and all the material adhesives and things that we did test.
And the different levels to which we tested, so the different, the shake levels, so which ones would do better at lower shakes versus higher shakes, and comparing and contrasting the different two methods, so the one where you tip it to 90 degrees or different degrees, and then also putting on a shake table. So that will kind of come out in the paper, and so all that will be detailed. But we've had so many questions from people asking us, how do you even apply this? That we thought that it was quite useful to do something focused on applying it practical way.
Very practical. I appreciate that. Yeah, it looked, in comparison, like you were saying, to working with museum wax, it's like, oh, and then just put the paper down and peel it off. It looks amazing. So, although I'm sure it takes some practice. We have a question here about what type of deck materials you tested it with. Will that be included in this fantastic chart?
Yes, it will be. So mainly the types of surfaces we do are fabric covered surfaces, painted MDF or other painted material surfaces, and glass or acrylic. Now, functionally glass and acrylic are effectively the same, so we just used acrylic. So those are the main decking materials that we would have inside our display cases. And yeah, so those are the ones we tested with.
Great. There's a question here about how well it works with wood, and it sounds like if you've been using it on MDF, then it does work with wood, but I think this question might be about wood objects. and if it's easily removed from wood.
Yeah, and this is one of our particular concerns because obviously we have a number of tables within the museum where, and especially in a new exhibition that we're working on, where people want to put objects directly on the table as though you're laying up a beautiful table, National Trust style. And obviously for us here, it's a big risk of earthquakes. So we can't obviously fix to the table because the table is often a collection item itself, and they're often varnished. Or French polished. So actually one of the really key things that we were looking at is whether we were getting any staining. And obviously if anyone's used quake wax, you'll know that it completely stains horribly any surface that it touches. So that really wasn't an option. We used it at the art gallery for an exhibition, a more modern table. And that over quite a short display of 3 months, we didn't get any staining on the table. But again, that's quite a just short display period. So trying to do those longitudinal studies will help quite a lot with that. But I certainly think, if your option is the object, especially if you're talking about glass object, if the option is no securing here, that's just not an option. So being able to actually use it on wood surfaces is certainly a lot more removable and a lot almost no staining that we could see on our one from using it on a polished surface. But that's not to say that I wouldn't suggest that you would test it first, because and especially over a longer period, that may not be the case.
All right. There's a question here. If you've experimented with adding water to thin the adhesive out to get thinner dots or less tacky dots, how does it mix with other things?
We've mixed with the 498. So actually we did create a number of different percentages with 360 and 303, which is the replacement for 360, and then also 498. And to give different levels of tack, because the 498 doesn't stay permanently tacky, but the two are able, you can mix the two to create different kinds of variations in tack. We found that anything over 10% basically wasn't tacky enough. It does make the dots stronger, so it does act as a stronger adhesive the more 498 that you put into it. But actually for a lot of our tests, basically the 303 was perfectly acceptable to a real earthquake scenario. So actually the added issues of trying to mix and making sure that your mix is a perfect mix sometimes is quite difficult, and contamination from different surfaces. So we try to keep it sort of as simple as possible, because our aim is that this is able to be used by a lot of small regional museums and by individuals. So it's quite, it's more complex. They've got to get two materials and then they've got to mix them.
We also found the colour change slightly, didn't we?
Yeah.
So I think the higher the mix, the slightly more yellow it was. So,
yeah, a little. Yeah.
303 is not perfectly clear. Ropex was basically perfectly clear, and so it's subtly coloured. But we find that in the small quantities we're using it, you saw some of the galleries there of glasses on glass shells, and you really don't notice the discoloration there. It's only when you get a large amount of it that you get a very slight perceived yellow.
So if you're making plate bases, so for like heavier, larger objects, sometimes what we do is we basically create a sort of a full base mount, where it's quite a solid thing like a plate, something that's not broken before. So you can actually create a sort of full base mount. And in that case, actually diluting it will be better, because Ropex flows really beautifully across the surface, sometimes a bit too beautifully, whereas the Lascaux will kind of more stay where you put it. So actually having that float, so by diluting it, you will be able to get it to form more of a float. But we actually found that with the dots, the Lascaux works really well in terms of creating quite a nice, you want a little bit of a dot, a little bit of raisedness, because you've got to be able to get underneath it. And also because you want that little bit of squish. So in an earthquake, it actually does more than just acts as an adhesive. It actually sort of gives a bit of cushioning action as well. So that's really quite crucial to it. So you do want a little bit of raisedness, and actually putting the baking paper over the top just gives you that nice flat surface above and below.
Gosh, that was wonderful, you guys. Thank you so much. I know there's more questions, so everybody, please do come to the after party, and the presenters' contact information is available to you. But that was just super cool. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
So the next and final presentation is from Philip Roots, Robin Hansen, Elizabeth Saluk, and Kristen Windmuller Luna of the Cleveland Museum of Art, Cleveland, Ohio, US of A, and Renee Stein and Bruce Raper from Emory University, that's in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. And they will speak on a super topical topic, remote mount making and virtual couriering, a case study.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kristen Windmuller Luna, Curator of African Arts at the Cleveland Museum of Art in Cleveland, Ohio. We're standing in the exhibition Second Careers, Two Tributaries in African Art. The exhibition was curated by Dr. Ugochukwu Smooth Nzewe, who is the former Curator of African Arts here in Cleveland. He is now a curator at the Museum of Modern Art. Because of the coronavirus pandemic, this exhibition was postponed, and we're now installing it. Because of the pandemic as well, Smooth was not able to come to Cleveland to install it, so now as host curator, I'm installing the exhibition along with our incredible and talented team here in Cleveland. Right now, I'm standing in front of something called a Donson Dlokyu, which is a hunter's shirt made by a Malinke hunter in West Africa. Everything about this shirt is about power and the idea of transforming the organic into the extraordinary. Everything about this shirt speaks to the individual power of the hunter who made it and the accumulation of his power over time. Quite simply, this is a tunic. The tunic is a rectangle with sleeves. It is dyed with herbs that help to protect its wearer, and each row shows the strength that the hunter gained as his career progressed. This is all made of organic materials and expresses the Malinke idea and also the Bamana idea that every living thing had something called niyama. Niyama is power, and as a hunter killed his prey, he incorporated that niyama and also secret knowledge that he had into his own being. So we can see here the niyama, that power of different animals, including lizards, antelopes, spotted wild felines, possibly leopards, that have all been incorporated into this shirt, showing not only literally what kind of animals this hunter has captured, but whose spirits and qualities he now embodies in himself. This tunic also is covered with many leather packets that contain Quranic verses, as well as magical squares and other kinds of religious symbolism. This kind of Islamic writing did not need to be read to be powerful. We can think of this as a kind of spiritual armature, spiritual armor even, that further protected the hunter. Each Donson Dlokyu hunter's shirt was unique to its owner, and the meaning of each individual piece represented the secret knowledge that the hunter had accumulated over his career. We're very excited to have this work on loan from the Carlos Museum in Emory, and to have had such a unique opportunity to work with our teams through the advent of digital mount making, working remotely, and now through virtual couriering using new ways of collaboration through our team to think about how to best display this. Whenever we're displaying something like this in a museum, particularly in an art museum in a Western context, we're thinking about many different things. We're thinking about how do we display this best? How do we conserve this work? How do we protect it? Particularly in a work like this that has so many fragile and light-sensitive materials. And as my colleagues will continue in this presentation, you'll see many steps were undertaken to make sure that this work traveled safely across the country and that it is now presented in a way that both shows off its best features and preserves it so that it can be seen for many years to come. We hope you'll be able to come to Cleveland to see this exhibition, and if not, we'll be having many features for it online. And so, without further ado, I will turn this over to more of my colleagues. Thank you all, and again, it's been a pleasure to work with so many talented colleagues here in collaboration as we work to get this show together and to keep one another safe under these most unusual of working conditions. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Saluk. I'm the exhibition registrar here at the Cleveland Museum of Art. My role at this museum is to ensure the safety of all of the loans that we borrow for our wonderful exhibition program. During the pandemic shutdown, we had to work quickly with our fine arts shipping agents to return the artwork that was already on loan to the lending institution without the presence of a courier. Couriers were unable or unwilling to travel and continue to be in that situation. We worked quickly with our shipping agents to devise various strategies in order to make sure that we still had eyes and ears on the ground and we're doing our best to mitigate risk and ensure the safety of these precious objects. We started using GPS trackers on crates. We started using trackers that send climate readings continuously to the borrower. And our shipping agents have increased their level of communication, sending text messages, pictures, phone calls throughout the process. We've also used bookend couriers, which means the lender and the borrower both send an agent to oversee the transit of the vehicle with the crate inside, and then oversee the transfer of custody to the shipping agents for international transit. All of these tools are great, and they allow us to move artwork between institutions. However, the point in which the objects are the most fragile is the installation and the deinstallation, and we need more tools there. So that's where the idea of virtual courier comes in. We are allowed with a virtual courier to bring the lender's representatives into the gallery with us. Here at the CMA, we use Microsoft Teams, so that allows me to send a meeting invite to the lender couriers, whether that's the registrar, the conservator, the packers, the curators, whoever it may be. So we send this meeting invite and then they join us here in the galleries. We are presenting two views of our space. One, an overall view, kind of a background view of the gallery so that the lenders can see the tool placement, the carts, how safe our galleries are and what we're doing in the space. That we're achieving with an iPad on a tripod kind of in the rear of the gallery. Additionally, I have a USB webcam attached to my laptop, and this is on a roller cart. So this allows me to get very close to the objects, and I can even move the webcam right up to the surface to get a nice detailed view. This is a Logitech C920, which has autofocus, and it's been working really well. Lighting is important, and as long as you have the light behind, we've been getting really good images with this. So with these tools, we're allowed to do a lot. We've safely installed this object this week, which was terrific and really exciting to have a successful virtual courier experience on a very complicated object. And it seems very clear to me that even after the pandemic is over, we're going to continue to use these tools. They allow couriers to be present in greater numbers. More staff can be present in these installations, and it saves on shipping budgets and courier travel time. So there's a lot of benefits to using the techniques. I don't think they're appropriate for every loan, but for a good majority. And it allows us to keep making art happen, making these exhibitions happening, and doing what we all love to do. So thank you.
Very much. Vertical. Down, good, in. All right, it's all you guys now. Bottoms out, you'll know.
Renee, we're going to lift the front up and take it off.
Wow.
Finished here, but it's ripped. You know, like it's as though somebody tailored it in a way, and then the person that was actually wearing it, it was too tight under there, so they just kind of modified it. Yeah. So Renee, it all looks really good. There were no loose bits anywhere. It all seems to me to have traveled just fine.
Okay, so we're going to roll it over to the case, and then we're going, one arm handle will be at one end of the PVC pipe, and one will be at the other end, and then there'll be two of us down at the bottom, and one of us is going to hold that inner tube that goes up inside of the mount, and then I'm going to take the finished tube out and put it into the case, and then we're going to put the whole thing down into the finished tube. Any questions?
No, that sounds great.
Yeah. Let me get this out of your way. Sorry. Now, swivel it so we can take the PVC out and draw it in. Yeah.
I have Ethafoam, acid-free cardstock with the brown fabric glued to it that are just end caps for aesthetics. Is that all right?
Perfect.
Okay.
Renee, Elena, any questions or anything?
No, it looks great.
Okay.
I'm gonna fill this light so we start getting what yellow lights gonna look like.
Well, it looks beautiful. I'm so happy it traveled well. This is great.
Well, I've been snapping lots of screenshots, which has been super. We can really see what's happening, and it looks beautiful. Everything worked very smoothly in terms of the transfer, and the case just gives it wonderful space.
Making the mount for this hunter's shirt on loan to the Cleveland Museum of Art from the Carlos Museum at Emory University was a great challenge for textile conservator Robin Hanson and myself. We didn't have access to the object. It's at Emory University, and we're in Cleveland, and it's a pandemic. We had to make the mount using a muslin pattern made by Renee Stein at the Carlos Museum. This worked very well. The mount for the hunter's shirt is a variation of a classic textile T-mount. We designed the mount to function as a support for shipping as well as a display mount. The mount and the cardboard shipping box are also made to be a permanent storage container. The main body of the mount is made of two 3/4-inch hexamount archival panels glued together, sandwiching a T-mount made of a cardboard tube connected to a 9-pound Ethafoam block. Glued and screwed an Ethafoam cylinder to the bottom of the Ethafoam shoulder support. This is inserted into the cardboard tube to give it extra strength. I also cut a V-shaped slot in the top of the Ethafoam block. This helps center and stabilize the shoulder support tubes. After I cut a U-shaped neck opening, Robin Hanson covered the main body of the mount in polyester batting covered with cotton fabric. The fabric is sewn in place and then inserted into slots cut into the Ethafoam shoulder support block. The 5mm thick cardboard tubes are secured to the body of the mount with keyhole slots and long washer head screws that are screwed into the Ethafoam. Robin covered the tubes with polyester batting covered with cotton fabric. The fabric is adhered to the tubes with Biva film. Uncovered portions of the tubes that are not in contact with the textile are painted with brown acrylic paint. I cut the keyholes with a milling machine. Hunter shirt laying flat on a padded support. The mount is inserted through the bottom opening. Then the shoulder support tubes are slid in through the arm openings, where they engage into the keyholes. After they're engaged into the keyholes, a third security screw is inserted to prevent the tubes from coming unsecured during shipping and handling. This video shows how the prototype for the mount was constructed. This is half of the mount viewed from the neck opening. The tube is inserted through the arm opening of the textile and then engaged into the keyhole. A third security screw is inserted through the neck opening. This will prevent the tubes from coming unsecured during shipping and handling. We use two separate arm supports on our T-mounts because we like the look of the open neck. If we had used one tube going across the neck opening, we feel that it would be visually distracting. After the mount is inserted into the hunter shirt, a PVC pipe is inserted through the two arm support tubes. This will provide support during transportation as well as handling the object coming in and out of the crate and into the case in its final installation. There's also an aluminum support tube that's inserted into the cardboard tube at the bottom of the mount. This is for shipping and for handling. When we finally install the mount, we replace this with a stainless steel tube. I made conical shaped ethafoam inserts that act as a spacer between the PVC pipe and the cardboard arm supports. This will help prevent vibration during transportation. During shipping, the weight of the mount is supported at 3 points. The PVC pipe is held by ethafoam blocks at the top, and the aluminum pole is held by an ethafoam block at the bottom. This supports the weight of the mount, and only the weight of the object is resting gently on a pillow below it. The weight of the upper part of the object is resting on the mount. The lid and body of the box are made of 2 layers of acid-free corrugated cardboard, cross-laminated together and held together with 3M 465 double-stick tape, making the corrugations run perpendicular to each other. This makes the cardboard much more difficult to bend, but the final box is very stiff and much stronger. The corners are secured with hot glue and tape. Robin attached the high loft polyester batting to the lid with hot glue and cotton fabric. Renee Stein needed to remove a small portion of the batting to accommodate a thicker portion of the hunter's shirt when she was packing the object at the Carlos Museum. You can see the depression in the batting. The box is made with one side that folds down, allowing the tray with the hunter's shirt to slide out without having to lift it out of the box. Robin made a high loft polyester pillow to support the side of the hunter's shirt that rests on the bottom of the box. It is held in place with ties and is used to help lift the shirt when we remove it from the box. The tray that the mount is attached to is made of 2 layers of corrugated cardboard cross-laminated together and then covered with fabric. The 9-pound ethafoam blocks are hot glued and screwed to the cardboard. Twill tape is used as a handle to slide the tray out of the box. Robin made a cotton cover that is tied in place and is used to help lift the hunter's shirt out of the box. Padded cylinders are used as needed to support the sides of the shirt during shipping. Here is the finished box ready to be inserted into the shipping crate. The telescopic stainless steel tubes are the same as our standard modular team mount shown here. I TIG weld a stainless steel washer to the top of the inner tube that is secured to the deck. I drill and tap the inner tube to accept 440 stainless steel set screws with nylon lock patches. This allows me to adjust the tolerances between the inner and outer tubes. It can also be used to micro adjust for level. I glued 2 stainless steel washers together with B72. The top washer is the same outer diameter as the inside diameter of the inner tube. The bottom washer is the same outside diameter as the outside diameter of the inner tube. The inner tube is secured to the deck with a 3/8 threaded rod that is bolted below the deck. If I don't have access below the deck, I use a hanger bolt with a coupling nut to secure the inner tube to the deck. That is how I attach the mounts for these bishop's copes to this platform. I use the same telescopic tube system for armor mounts and body forms. I TIG weld threaded rod to steel angle iron to attach T-mounts to the wall, such as this pre-Columbian tunic. When we need to work closely together installing artwork, we wear these N95 masks from McMaster Carr. I use hot glue to seal the exhaust valve. If you have a large head, you can make the elastic straps adjustable with twill tape and cord locks. Here are the sources for the harder to find materials that I used. The first one is for Biva film. The second one is for the cardboard tube and the hexamount board that we used. We actually had the cardboard tube custom made for us by Hollander Metal Edge. It's twice as thick as normal acid-free cardboard tube. It's actually what made this mount possible because I was able to mill the keyholes in it, and it's strong enough to support the weight. The last two are the telescopic tubes that I use. It's my standard mount tube, as you saw. I get that from McMaster Carr. And most of the other metal hardware we use McMaster Carr, and you can just search for it. I hope this information was useful to you. Thank you.
Wow, oh my gosh, that was incredible. What a great presentation. My heart was in my mouth. I'm sure I'm not the only one who was feeling that way, but you did such a great job of communicating and planning for every aspect. So I'm sure there are a bunch of questions. Lisa, on to you.
I'm here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you so much. That was a very timely and topical presentation and a great team effort. I was wondering to kick us off here, you know, I have this tendency, I'm finding, to build up in my mind how difficult everything will be during COVID. So I'm wondering if there were any aspects that were easier or harder than you anticipated throughout this process. Or did it go exactly as planned?
It went well from my end. I'd actually like to hear from Renee.
Sure. It went very smoothly on this end. We had a number of conversations during the pandemic shutdown period, either by phone or in emails, and also using Microsoft Teams so that we could all talk together at once, including curators, to think about how we would manage this project. And then Philip and Robin and I communicated a fair amount via email and also by phone to plan out the various aspects of this project. And that muslin mock-up that you saw was sewn on my bedroom floor during the shutdown. And I was so relieved when it all came together because I knew that the mock-up was a critical piece in making sure that the mount fit. And we were delighted. We received the mount inside its wonderful box that you've now seen detailed. And when it came here, we had wonderful instructions from Robin and Philip about how to transfer the mount from the mock-up shirt to the real shirt, which had been here in the lab for several months, undergoing treatment both before and after the shutdown period. And one of the wonderful things for me as a mentor to graduate students and interns of conservation was that we had a graduate intern from the UCLA program who assisted with the treatment. And because this courier trip was done via a Teams connection, she was able to join us from DC and see her work being installed in Cleveland. And for her, as an emerging conservator, it was a great opportunity to be part of a courier trip, even though we weren't both physically there. So I welcomed that sort of advantage of this format. And the mount, as you saw, transferred beautifully from the mock-up to the hunter's shirt and then back into the box with just very small modification to that lofted batting, as Philip pointed out in the presentation, just to make room for one of those very projecting claws. And then we observed the Cleveland folks handle it with what seemed to be great ease and fluidity. And now it looks beautiful in the galleries.
It does look really beautiful. Yeah. I was holding my breath during that installation video there. So let's see, we have a question come in. Were the screws fixing the top tubes to the base form driven into the ethafoam?
Yes, they're, yeah, okay, I know the one, they're the ones for the keyhole. Yeah, they're probably like 3 or 4 inches long, and they go into 9-pound ethafoam. They're not moving.
Right, great. I had a question actually about, kind of the array of technology that you used throughout this process. You'd mentioned, that there was GPS technology being used, you were using Teams. And what was the kind of time investment in getting proficient in all of these new programs?
Well, it's still a work in progress. We are having more discussions that we need a microphone just this week. I think that'll help the lender hear what we're doing in the gallery more clearly. I think every time we do it, we're going to learn things. For the testing that we did on this end, I work with my other registrarial colleagues to do kind of mock-ups. So I would be in a section of the museum and they would be at home, and I would use the cameras to try to focus and kind of wheel around and see how well that worked. So we weeded out a couple cameras that weren't functioning well for us and tweaking the lights. But not until this week did we realize just how poor the sound quality could be on these career experiences. So we'll look into microphones soon. So if anyone has any recommendations, I'd be happy to have them.
Throw them in the chat, folks. Well, so that actually leads really well into another question, in that, this was a pretty novel experience, I'm guessing, for all of you this time around. But, it's looking more and more like this is the new part of the new normal. So do you see this impacting like exhibition timelines and loan agreements going into the future?
I do. I think that there's going to be a decrease in the amount of couriers traveling, regardless of the pandemic status. I think this is the opportunity that this horrible situation has presented all of us in, is that we are pivoting and developing new technology and learning to trust each other more, learning to communicate more, learning to make things happen in a way that we just never tried before, because the old way of sending couriers everywhere worked, and it worked for decades. I think the technology will continue to evolve and will continue to get better, but I don't see us going back really to couriers for every loan like we used to. It will present challenges. We just have to schedule a little differently. But I think it's going to be okay. We'll still be able to make art happen, make wonderful exhibitions come together. We are an amazing group of creative people and problem solvers, so we'll get through it.
And I noted in the chat, someone mentioned communication. Our team is so brilliant in terms of their technical skill, but also communication. And I will say that our team at CMA already had an existing relationship with the folks at Emory and with the Brooklyn Museum, who we did a later virtual courier trip. I think for institutions that we don't have relationships with, or for example, religious institutions that we borrow from, it may be a lot harder to do these kind of virtual courier trips, or it may not be within their culture of lending, or even within the culture of respect or practice that they have. So we'll have to be adaptable in that sense, and even understanding the different kinds of objects that we have. But certainly we are getting better as even every single one. And I think we're up to 3 now, something. Right. Everyone's a new one.
A new adventure. We have a question here for Philip. Could you explain how the mount was inserted into the garment? Was it through the arms or the body?
It's a 3-piece mount. There's the main body. So with the object flat on the padded cushion on a table, the main body of the mount is inserted in from the bottom of the object, and then the arm tubes are slid in from each arm, and then they engage, as you saw in the video, into the keyhole slots, and then a security screw goes in so they don't move. And then the PVC pipe is in there to make it stronger and more stable. I mean, you are just dealing with cardboard, strong cardboard, but still, for shipping and handling, you want to have that support tube through it. And then it also gives you something to handle, so we're not handling the very fragile object. So the whole time we never really touched the object. The textile was just held by the pipe in the bottom and the PVC pipe outside. So we never actually touched it. It went into the case, and then the PVC, as you saw in the video, the PVC pipe was extracted. And then to remove it, it'll be in the reverse. The PVC pipe will go in, and the 2 art handlers will pick it up, and the third one at the bottom to pick up the pipe, and then goes down to a temporary stand, rolls back, gets condition checked, the reverse of what you saw.
Fantastic. So there is a question here about honeycomb. Let's see. It says, here in New Zealand, it's difficult to find a supply of archival honeycomb board/panel material. I used it a lot in France years ago in cabinetry applications. Is it a material you use often, and in what kinds of applications?
We've used it for a number of things. Robin could also comment on that. We like it for textiles. It's very light. The top, we buy the higher end, so the top of it's a cotton. It's not actually paper pulp. It's actually cotton. It's not cheap, but look at the value of the object you're putting into it. I wonder, you would have to check with a conservator. I wonder if you could make basically the same mount by stacking foam core or gator board. Would have similar properties, lightweight, stiff, but you want to make sure, check with a conservator. I rely completely on whatever the conservators say is good. I go with it. So, but I could think that from a structural standpoint, the foam core would work combined with the Ethafoam. So basically, you could make the same mount that I did with that. Also, that heavy tube, while I'm on the subject, that heavy tube we had was custom made, and that kind of made that mount possible. And I've been thinking about it, and if you had just standard tube, and if you cut a section, like a scrap section off, and you cut a section out of it so it became like a C, you could insert that into the tube, it would spring out. And if you had coated that with PVA adhesive and stuck it in there, and it would spring out, let it sit overnight, you would have doubled the wall thickness at the bottom where you need to mill it, and you could accomplish the same thing. I think this mount could be made by any textile conservator with hand tools. Ignore the part about the TIG welding, you don't need that. And ignore the part about the milling machine, you don't need that. If you drill your holes precisely, you could cut those slots by hand. You could use hand tools to cut everything. Even the stainless steel pipe could be cut with a hacksaw. You take your time, cut square, finish with the file. The TIG welding is actually optional. All it does is hold the washer on the top. There's a bolt that goes through the whole assembly into the base, and it's tightened down. It just keeps everything aligned. And I've actually made them. I experimented doing the whole thing with B72, gluing the washer on top of B72. I can TIG weld, so that's what I do. But this is actually an attainable mount and storage box for any textile conservator with some thought.
Great. Oh, there is a question actually about this. Do you have schematics typed up for this sort of mount?
This is a one-off. This is the first time we've ever made it. So go back, watch the video. It's on YouTube. Hit pause, take notes. After you do all that and watch it several times, then send me an email, and maybe I'll send you some more pictures that might help you figure it out. But there's no, I mean, it's what we had. We had this size tube, we had this size, and cut the F foam to fit, and made it for that object. There's no schematic. Everything you know is in the video.
What I'd like to clarify, though, this is Robin, is that we do have written instructions for the component of the mount that goes into the deck of the case, because we always use that single lollipop stick, whatever you want to call it, and that we do have written up.
Also, for more information, go to the IMF website, the Mountmakers website, and look under mounts. I forget what category. Maybe it was under soft ones. I don't remember. But I did a paper for the London Mountmakers Forum discussing that stainless steel T-mount, and it's much more detail. I like every little part number of set screw and part number for the pipe, which is all used in this, is in there, and it's actually our standard mount. What made this one different was it needed to support the object for shipping, and so that's why we had to have that big panel to support. So that what the panel did is it supported the weight of the upper part of the object, while the weight of the lower part of the object was just on the pillow. And then the weight of the mount was supported by the 3 points. So the weight of the mount wasn't bearing at all on the object at all. And so only the weight of the bottom part of the textile was on the bottom pillow, and the weight of the top part was on the panel, if that makes sense to you. That's why we did all that. Otherwise, I mean, if it was just a standard mount, you wouldn't need all the panel part, right? It's only for shipping. And this is a rare instance that, normally we would dress a garment there, and we would use our standard T-mount with modifications. Sometimes I'll use plexi if the lender requires it for the tube at the top, and it's a modular, customizable component. So each arm tube I make for the standard one is unique to that textile. So we'll bag that, keep it clean, label it with an accession number, that gets put away, and then the T part of it gets reused over and over again.
All right, great. There are some comments in the chat to check out the IMF in London, and then also on Stash C for the variations on this solution. So if we have a little bit more time, what I wanted to do actually is open it up for you all, because this is such a recent project, and there's 5 of you here. You're almost a panel in and of yourselves. If you had any questions for each other, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of open chat. You don't have to, but just with these last few minutes, if you had anything you wanted to throw out there.
I thought the whole experience worked very well, but it took a lot of communication and a lot of planning, and I mean, a lot of time. So I mean, we're fortunate that we had all of those.
We do actually have some questions in the Q&A. Keep thinking though. How much did the planning and execution of the method take? And also beautiful work, by the way.
It was months out. I think our first team meeting was right at the end of lockdown. Is that correct, Elizabeth? So yeah, but it was our summer project. It kind of got us back in the groove after lockdown. A lot of our shows were canceled, and our schedules had all changed, and we kind of gave us something to focus on. So it was actually a welcome thing. And as far as hours, it took a lot of hours. I don't know, weeks.
Yeah.
Communications were periodic throughout that extended period of time. We had the one big Teams meeting kind of as a launch, and then I think Robin and I had probably 3 or 4 phone conversations, and I know that we had some shared emails periodically throughout that extended period when you were making the mount, just to check in on things like fabric choice and what areas to cover, and the idea of using the panel, the honeycomb panel inside, which helped to support the upper weight, as Philip said. So all that communication was spread over a period of time. And while I didn't know how much time they were working in Cleveland, when the box arrived here with this beautiful mount and its support for travel, it was evident that a ton of time had been spent making it all fit so perfectly. And our time on this end with that mount of inserting it into the hunter's shirt was incredibly efficient. We had wonderful notes on how to do it. I knew what was coming because we'd been talking about it all along. There were really no surprises, and we just reversed the process of taking the mount out of the mock-up shirt and put it inside the hunter's shirt, practiced a couple of times so we would know what the object would experience in Cleveland in case we had any modifications to the handling to suggest, and closed it back up and had the crate put around it. So it was very efficient on this end, and we only had probably a couple of weeks from once the box arrived here with the mount in it that we inserted, made any small changes, and turned it right back around. So on this side, it was compressed and efficient.
Fantastic. We have a question here about TIG welding. And the question reads, I make almost all my mounts here, small and large, with TIG welded steel rod /wire/bar. Do you generally make smaller mounts with brass, or do you utilize welding capabilities to fabricate mounts?
Most of our mounts are brass, like most museums. It's so efficient. It's easy to work with. We use classic silver solder. I know everybody was. I don't use other. I've seen other people using these other silver solders. We use classic jeweler silver solder. So we use the first one gets welded with silver solder with hard. Then we go to medium, and so on down the line. So we can do multiple joints at different temperatures. It's just classic jeweler's work, basically. The TIG welding, it comes in for heavy things, or steel, stainless steel, aluminum occasionally we use, but I'd say 90% of our mounts are classic brass, silver brazed together.
All right, thank you. Well, we've worked through the Q&A, so how are we doing for time, Emily?
Well, hello, Lisa. Great job, everybody. I think we're doing just fine. If there's any last minute questions, we have a couple more minutes. Otherwise, we can those can be addressed in the after party and further communications. But this is just super inspiring, especially for such a powerful shirt. I thank you so much, all of you. So if there aren't any more questions, I'm not seeing anything. Lisa, I know Lisa will let me know.
No, I think that's great. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so well, I can't believe this is we're at the end of this most fantastic virtual conference. So the organizers would now like to show you a video to wrap things up on TV.
Hi everyone, Shelley again. And I guess it's finally time to say goodbye, but not without a few thank yous, because there were so many people who helped out to make this week possible. I want to first thank all our presenters and moderators who not only prepared and presented fabulous talks, but also took on the new technological challenges beautifully. Being willing to come and host breakout rooms at our after parties was so generous and made them so fun and so informative. Here they all are. And all the rest of the volunteers from far and wide who made this event possible in all different ways. Thank you so much. And thank you again to the entire IMF steering committee, who are also volunteers, working around their regular mount making and conservation jobs and stepping in as they could to do whatever it took to make this happen. This is a massive undertaking, and it couldn't have happened without all those long planning meetings and conversations and email chains. But I want to share specific gratitude for Richard Hards, who took on the challenge of starting us off in our Instagram world, and Pierre-Luc Brouet for taking that Instagram challenge and exploding it into the informative and fun site that it is today, and for memes. And Sam Hamilton, who despite a broken wrist, helped out every day this week, but also steadfastly and patiently set up and guided us toward the Slack app use that has deepened the experience for many of us this week. And Sam Gatley, who was an indispensable advisor for me around the Textile Days' many exciting twists and turns. And also, she was also very willing to jump in wherever help was needed. And Emmy Savacool, who was also game to work wherever help was needed and brought so much to the table every time that she did. BJ Farrar, who sent out our email blasts, kept that website's online forum flowing, and kept our AIC wiki page updated. Elizabeth Soriano, who was the rock of this committee, I think. She takes care of so many behind the scenes, thankless tasks and makes things flow so it looks effortless. She took on the huge job of content coordinator for this conference and deserves extra kudos, maybe some time off even, for that and everything else that she's done for IMF 2020. And last but not least, a big thank you to Laura McClure, who started with the committee after winning our logo competition just a few months ago, but has gone on to be indispensable through her untiring graphics efforts, YouTube knowledge, website savvy, being generally game to whatever challenge came up, and maybe most importantly, her meme making talents. Thank you all for being willing to try this out in these trying and crazy times. And I also just wanted to give a thank you to all the institutions, departments, supervisors, companies that supported this event and allowed us to take the time and resources to create it. From the Smithsonian and NMAI, I want to thank my supervisor, Marian Kamenetz, for giving me permission to take this on, the NMAI Conservation and Collections Departments for supporting this event with their time and knowledge, Becky in Events and Wendy in Intellectual Property, who gave such valuable advice, Diana in the Smithsonian's office, OCIO office, for her setup and permission and tech help in general, and last but not least, Abby, Johannes, and Alex in NMAI's IT department for their support, patience, guidance, and knowledge in all aspects of this virtual event. And finally, I have to thank my family, John and Tasha, for supporting me fully and feeding me these last few months so I could focus on all this. I'm forever grateful. But most importantly, to all of you from around the world who have defied the isolation and disconnectedness that these times can impose on us, to instead come together as global colleagues and craftspeople and have a great time, even if it has to be in 2 dimensions for now. Thank you again, and happy mount making. Hi, everybody. Shelley again. And I'm assuming you all can see me because I can't see myself. But thank you all so much for coming. This has been a great 4 days. I've learned so much, and I hope you have too. And now what I'd like to do is to bring up the other members of the IMF steering committee and see if any of you guys have any send-off words that you'd like to share with the group.
Hi. I feel really honored to have been invited to join the IMF steering committee. Over the past few months, I met so many amazing people, and my knowledge in mount making has grown like kind of a kitten on steroids. Thanks to everyone who make this event possible, and many thanks at all the people who attend the presentation. And after the forum, we will continue to share and encourage our trade on our social media channels. So stay tuned, everyone. We'll be back.
Pam and Earl, are you there? Sam Gatley, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, hi. I would just like to say to everyone what a privilege it has been to be involved with such an amazing group of people that are so willing to give their time and share their expertise and knowledge and be so open about the challenges and the solutions. And just to thank everybody who has come and worked so hard, and especially thank you to you, Shelley. Yeah, cheers everyone. Till next time.
Thank you. Sam Hamilton.
Hi. I also want to say that it's been such a great privilege to be part of the conference steering committee. Thank you to the committee members and of course all the volunteers for their incredible work. Thank you to you, Shelley, for your tireless efforts. It's been a real pleasure to work with you all. I also want to thank everyone who's shared their knowledge and their experience, and to everyone who's joined and connected through this virtual forum. I've learnt so much, and I really look forward to seeing you all again, and hopefully that's in Australia one day in the future, and not too distant future, hopefully.
And Jamie. Thank you, Sam.
Oh my, this has been amazing. I'm looking forward to more virtual as part of this whole thing, because it's just proven itself to have such value. Thanks so much, Shelley, and everyone who's worked on this.
Thank you, Jamie. And David and Mayor, did you have anything you'd like to say?
Yeah. I'm so glad that we could get together and have such a good time with everybody. Tomorrow, we're back in the shop.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, wow, 4 days of creative solutions to interesting problems. And that's just on the mount making end. For me, it was a whole experience on the technical end. I don't think I knew how to spell Zoom before we started this. So now, whole new thing. Thanks to everybody for coming in and being part of, and I hope you go home with a lot of new ideas.
Thank you. And Laura, are you out there?
I'm here. I also wanted to thank everyone. I've been so honored to be a part of this wonderful virtual event. I always learn so much and love connecting with all of the people in our field. And thank you, Shelley, for all of the work that you've done to bring this together. And thank you, the world, for attending.
Thank you. And Emmy. Emmy, are you there?
Hi, everybody. I'm so very grateful to have gotten to be a part of this amazing event, to have gotten to meet all of you vibrant, wonderful, interesting group of makers. Thank you so much for everyone for sharing their knowledge and being so open, and yeah, I'm very excited for next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And Elizabeth.
Hi, I want to thank everyone for attending. We wouldn't have had, we had an amazing attendance list. It was just amazing. And we couldn't have done it without all the volunteers and the presenters from around the globe. Regardless of time zones, the participation was amazing. And a very special thank you to Shelley Euler, whose enthusiasm Her enthusiasm, her vision, and her organization made this IMF happen. So thank you, Shelley.
I need to click on.
Hi, Pam and Earl.
Hey,
Hey.
we're having technical difficulties.
Welcome to Zoom land. Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to get down here lower. I wish.
Turn that one off. We've got two computers on here now and we're getting a feedback or something. I never knew computers did that. Just turn it off. But anyway, we wanted to both say how we think this is really not, you know, the end of the IMF, but the beginning of a whole new internet aspect of mount making that's going to grow and continue to grow, mainly because of Shelley, I think.
Oh, no, it's because of everybody. It's going to grow. It's all of you guys.
Are they what?
But thank you guys. Thanks for your comments. Richard, are you there?
Hello. I'm not seeing myself on here, but
Oh, you're there. We can see you.
That's all.
okay. Well, as strange as it's been to not see people in person, it's great to have had 4 days of going much deeper into content and having a lot more time to spend with people. And I'm sad it's over, but looking forward to the next time. Thank you, everybody, for all of your hard work and all of your presentations. And I really learned a lot. So it's been great. Thanks.
Standing over in a stupid position and I can't.
Oh my goodness. Mark, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Well, I understand what it was doing over there. How do I get
We promise we didn't script this. This is too much
Okay,
fun.
sorry. I was, can you hear me
You're
now?
perfect. We can see
Okay.
you and hear you.
Okay, I just was going to say that in 2008, this all started with the initiative that Mac and BJ took to start the Mount Making Forum. And who would have thought that in 2020, due to a pandemic, we'd have to be doing it virtually. And thinking about it virtually seemed like that's crazy. But it's a huge success, thanks to Shelley, Laura, Elizabeth, and everybody else who worked on it. And having seen the presentation from Cleveland, we've perhaps seen the future. We couldn't see this in the future. We couldn't see this in the future in 2008, that in 2020 there'd be a pandemic, but we've now seen what's going to be a change, I think, and I'm going on too long, but I really think this is going to change everything. And the next forum may be a hybrid, but we've already learned that in the future, couriers won't have to be at a location. It can be done remotely. So it's an amazing time. Thank you to everybody, the presenters, the attendees, and everything. And now I'll be quiet.
That's okay. We're glad to hear from you, Mark. And Mac, are you out there?
Yeah, hello everyone from Los Angeles. I'm really impressed by all the papers and all the effort that went into this. Just the international participation is mind-boggling. And I think our next challenge is, as Mark said, to create a hybrid that perpetuates the momentum that's been developed here and folds that into the physical event that we certainly hope to have 2 years from now at the Getty Center. So big shout out to Shelley, all the crew, everybody else. Thanks so much. Stay strong, stay safe.
Thank you, Mac. And last but not least, BJ.
Hey everyone, I'm going to sound completely redundant here. I'm sorry. But I have to say, this has been an amazing 4 days, beyond, certainly beyond my expectations of what could be done. If this is your first IMF conference, I know I met a few people in the after parties that this was their first conference, or if this was your 7th one, we want to thank you for your participation. It makes a significant difference, and we look forward to your continued involvement, because that's what makes this group what it is. And also a huge special thanks to Shelley and all of our IMF volunteers, because without their dedication, this conference wouldn't have been a reality. So we couldn't have done it without you. So thanks, everyone. And lastly, I just wanted to thank all of our presenters, because it's their willingness to share their amazing projects, techniques, and lessons learned that has such lasting benefits for all of us. And that's what this is about. It's about learning and about moving our profession forward. So I've rambled on too much here, but hey, cheers to a great conference.
Yay. And now the rest, we'll do this symbolic gesture, and everybody who's not somebody from the Getty, we're gonna disappear until the after party. We'll see you at the after party. And let you guys from the Getty kick off the next one. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Shelley.
I'll go ahead and start off, and we hope to see as many attendees as possible in person at the Getty, but we'll definitely have a hybrid version because we know a lot of you can't attend in person. And we hope to see you in 2022.
Definitely. Yes, it was supposed to happen next month, but that isn't our reality right now. So it's been postponed. We've gotten a good solid support from the Getty that will do it in 2022. So we're looking forward to developing that, and especially, as Max said, to turn this into, and Elizabeth, into a hybrid situation. I mean, clearly this is a successful format.
Yes, we do have our work cut out for us, because BJ and I were talking the other day. I think now it's going to take 2 teams. One team for the physical event and the other team for the virtual event, working together to pull this hybrid version off that's now running around all of our minds. But we're up for the game. We love it. We love you guys. Please keep an eye on that website. It gets better every month. People are adding to it, changing it, trying to infuse it with all the energy that's out there. So hang tough. We look forward to seeing you in a couple of years. We'll try to give you updates and maybe some live feeds or some virtual feeds in the interim.
Yes, definitely. Thanks, everyone.
See you at the after party. That'll start at 7.